Hello, good evening and welcome to our front. Today, we actually are counting down to the second State of Nations address by President Akufo-Addo. But we are starting with, of course, you've heard from politicians, you've heard from people who might really have very little knowledge of what the Ghanaian economy is and everything to do with it. Today, we will start our review ahead of the President State of Nations address from the very lens of the most influential civil society grouping in the Republic of Ghana. After this break, I'll tell you who my guest is. I'm sure by how you have an inkling. Then commence our conversation. You're welcome back to our front. My name is Raymond Akwa. And as I did tell you earlier on, the president will soon deliver his second State of the Nations address. Now, the actual state of the nation, after being in office for 1 year, has been assessed by various institutions. Today, the third most influential civil society grouping on the continent, and perhaps in Ghana, the consistently first most influential civil society grouping, is actually going to tell us. Of course, they've done a report already on this particular government's first year stay in office, but they'll tell us what this particular report entails, and we have a dialogue on that. My guest is the title is big, the founding, most want to say, the founding president of Imani Ghana. Franklin Kujo, you're welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a while.
Yes. You'll be. You're a busy man. You're a big man. Anyway.
Oh, come on.
But I have, over the period, followed keenly reports on the manifestos of political parties. But this is not only a report on a manifesto which should not be implemented, but this is based on the president's first year stay in office, what they put in their manifesto. Some would first and foremost want to know why not compare what they promised in their budget to what has really happened on the ground, as against what they promised in the manifesto, which might be broken into pieces and has a 4-year period to deal with.
Well, in actual fact, and thanks for the question, in actual fact, that's what we have done. What we've done is that we have assessed the progress of implementation of not just the manifesto promises, but through the lenses of the 2017 and 2018 budget, including the midterm plans of the government. That's a 2017 to 2024 government's midterm plan. So those, and of course, other reports and that have obviously reported the status of implementation of this project. So that's exactly what we did, because we do know that 1 year probably is not enough, and even if we were going to do any assessment in the future, including a midterm assessment in 2018, we'll still have to predicate them on the budget for the preceding years and the budget for the particular year in which we are undertaking the assessment. Okay. So that's the background. And what we did was to assess the initiatives that have been taken so far. Earlier on under the NDC, we only managed to conduct a midterm progress report in 2015. Okay. So that's the first time we are starting off on the single year.
From the commencement of the government?
From the commencement of a government. But even then, we've tweaked again the framework, because we usually would have to, under the NDC, when we are doing a midterm progress report and a final year progress report, we do proper quantification. This one is more or less a qualitative approach, because not much had really have been achieved yet.
Okay.
So that's the background.
That's interesting, because the question I was going to ask you is that, in a sum, what is the overall performance rating of this particular government?
No, we don't have a figure, because you see, the way we've structured the manifesto, if we were to give quantitative figures, what would have happened was that we were going to assess probably I call them the baby steps that have been taken over maybe a 25% mark. But you see, if we did that in the first year, knowing fully well they are just actually settling, or they now have settled and probably planning to take off, what will happen is that we may suggest to you that maybe they've achieved 70% of 25%, or they've achieved. But you see, in public communication, you know it. In the political communication, it might be cumbersome. And especially knowing very well that with the NDC, we actually started off with a midterm progress report, in which they achieved 27%. So if we started saying that in the first year of the MPP, if we're marking them over 25%, because you are considering 25% in 4 blocks, what it means is that whatever you say may be obviously juxtaposed with what the NDC achieved. And then we'd have lost completely the communications, in fact, the purpose of this assessment, which is essentially to say, well, you're undertaking certain steps, but watch some of them because there may be challenges along the way.
That's interesting. And I mean, I'll not go in any particular other country reports that you've done, but there are some very key issues that are to be established. First is the area of job creation.
Right.
I get the impression that the report actually feels that despite the numerous promises, and a small quote from it, at creating massive employment, there's little evidence to suggest the actual number of jobs created in the first year.
Well,
is that surprising?
Not entirely surprising, but simply also because
I saw the manifesto.
Well, also because
the NPP said that in their manifesto, 48% of Ghanaians were unemployed.
Right.
And that was probably misquoting what the landscape for jobs and for jobs report by the World Bank has stipulated.
Sure.
So the conception of what the problem was it properly known to the party in government today? Well,
irrespective of the figures per se, we've seen examples of excruciating levels of unemployment. I mean, recently, we had 4,000 people queuing for 500 jobs. So let's not even quibble over the statistics. The fact of the matter is that the question we should be asking really is whether understanding the problem and of course, conceptualizing the interventions are actually matching what the problems really are. And if you ask my personal opinion, I do not really think it's reflective of how the problems were perceived, especially some of the interventions. 600 million Ghana cedis allocated to 100,000 nation builders core to do projects or to get into employment that are not productive would not have added to the overall...
less likely to be sustainable.
Less likely to be sustainable because they are transient jobs. These are not jobs that would add any real productivity, if you like, to the economy. Because again, apart from being transient jobs, we've also seen the fact that it actually flies in the face of the government's own vision for the economy, which is to build a people-friendly and private sector-led, a private sector-friendly economy, which is anchored on job creation.
No, but it's an intervention. This is a deliberate intervention to actually solve a problem in the interim, possibly. Like the party, I mean, when the NPP was in power in 2005, they also brought in, based on a national security report, the NYEP then.
But they saw the challenges going forward.
Because it was not meant to be a program that would last forever.
Exactly, but then you had the scandals because these things were not properly conceptualized. And it's not just the NPP in 2005, the NDC followed. And these were, I call them scams, that are usually created in order to cream off from the budget. But let's be fair.
No, but it's gone through a lot of progress. There's a lot backing in it, but they're still saying that they are improving upon it. The modules are being tweaked in a way that they believe.
That's true, but let's be fair. There are other aspects of employment initiatives by the current government that are commendable. Just that we see, of course, the NEIP itself, I've forgotten what the acronym stands for, but something more entrepreneurial.
Yes, it's entrepreneurial improvement.
But it got a paltry 50 million Ghana cedis, right? Because that's going to create more lasting jobs. But it got only 50 million. And if you thought that the National Board for Small Scale Industries themselves are probably forgotten because they don't have even budgets that are closer, it's not in sync with the original idea that the jobs that are supposed to be created should be private sector focused and must be entrepreneurial. I'm not saying that there should not be interventions to help people who are actually in dire need of just basically to survive. But it must be seen to be coordinated in such a way that they at some level. In any case, let's just argue. Let's just make the comparison. Why give something that is more productive, 50 million Ghana cedis, and then give something that is wholly transient and has no future of sustainability, a whopping 600 million Ghana cedis? There's no alignment to the original vision. I mean, I think these are things we need to be talking about without necessarily sounding political. These are things.
I get you.
Because the fact of the matter really is that even in the agribusiness enclave, you would have thought that agriculture, which had almost 12 or I think 21% reduction in terms of allocations this year, I mean, agriculture should have received a bit more to focus on agribusiness. I mean, how else do you want to build upon your one district, one factory anchored on an agrarian-based system when you are not incentivizing enough young people to go into agribusiness? So 600 million, you could yank off probably 300 or 400 million of that to put into some serious agribusiness fund. Having said that, though, let's be also
There's a lot of money going into the planting for food and jobs.
But there's a lot of money going into the planting for food and jobs because agriculture is supposed to be our mainstay. I think that there should be more. There's always the talk about...
But it's not fixing the fundamentals in this case because government believes that there's a big problem. And of course, agri's contribution to GDP had declined over the period from being the biggest contributor to now lagging behind what they call it, services in this particular case.
Yes.
But to be fair, the understanding government has of this problem is that you need to develop the farming base before it can roll on to make the agribusiness part work.
We can understand that. We don't quibble over that. But almost every successive government, and since you and I were in secondary school, I don't know, I went to the sixth form, but when I got into secondary school in 1989, the challenges of agriculture have remained the same. What we are not taking advantage of is the modern systemized based with obviously with agriculture and even the modern system of understanding what industry actually means. I'll give you an example. So under one district, one factory, which is supposed to be the connector to the agriculture-based planting for food and jobs, it does not also take into consideration opportunities within the global scheme of things. See, 1 year that we've been going back and forth and trying to assess close to 461 plants to start one district, one factory. In 6 months, Rwanda has actually set up a plant in collaboration with Volkswagen, VW, and they're going to create 1,000 jobs. And you know how much they are going to spend? $20 million. The traditional notion of how agriculture can obviously connect to industry may be fine, but things are refining. I think that we could have easily created a factory if we had focused probably in the north. I was in Tamale with my team.
Okay.
And I was quite happy to see ladies and young women with their children strapped to themselves, sitting on riding on motorbikes with some calmness and some skill. And I thought to myself, maybe the government would have just started the one district, one factory within the precincts of Tamale by setting up a plant or an assembly plant that would just be retrofitting mobile motorbikes and employ 500 young ladies to get into that and serve as an enclave to serve the other northern regions as well as Burkina Faso. But driving through Accra, from Accra to the north, and you see all this vast expanse of wastelands, and then I ask myself, where are the connecting dots between what is being conceptualized in Accra as against all this vast expanse? Because truth be told, what you see by the roadside is actually what reflects of the potentials of an area. But there's vast expanse land.
I get your point.
Yeah.
We'll come to the trade part. We will deal with one district, one factory, because interestingly, there's an expression of interest in the papers already asking for, but we'll come to whether or not that's starting afresh or that's continuing what was supposed to be done previously.
Well, the fact of the matter is that it's good to think about these things and then assess papers and all of that. We can quibble about the methods as well. What I'm trying to say to you, that a country which is occupying 120th on the Doing Business report, and Rwanda, which is 41st on the Doing Business report, should start thinking in other terms rather than wait for brick and mortar types of thinking in establishing industry. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
but I mean, regardless, the planting for food and jobs actually created some 745,000 jobs.
Well, you and I don't know that.
That's what the minister
official
said.
Data.
I mean, I've asked for it. I've asked for data from them to show me.
Yes, but that's the challenge, because if the
who are the
same
people across the country who are being employed in this case?
Are these existing
They said they are
farmers
they are input suppliers and distributors.
Well, it could be possible that these linkages will be created, but we need to see the details, because as far as I'm concerned, all we've seen in agriculture is the cocoa, and these are government figures, by the way. Cocoa board having employed 10,000 people to do artificial pollination, and in actual fact, they're planting for food and jobs. The official figures we've seen are less than 4,000. So I don't know whether the minister himself has his figures probably under his own pillow and is dishing them out. We need to be able to interrogate this.
And the president,
because one of the things we
the
need
president
to be
did not
careful,
mention this during his first year.
That's the point, because you see, the president even
Because
alluded to the
5,000 is
fact
big.
that data collection is a problem.
Yeah.
And he thinks that we should wait for him in March for him to get us data on employment.
Perhaps they are finished in the Agric Ministry.
Well, that is quite audacious. Let me also say that the positive steps that the agriculture minister has taken must be lauded. I mean, we at the Imani came up with some reports and ranked them as one of the top 5 inspirational public sector leaders.
But you also raised concerns about the
but they also raised the
jobs,
concerns of planting for food and jobs. I mean, how do you suggest that 200,000 farmers were supposed to be signed up to this program, but then you report in the official, I think, the budget that 201,000 actually have been signed up already? Well, maybe that's an additional one. But the paucity of data, Samuel, Raymond, you and I have been quibbling over this,
Certainly.
and you do fact checking. It's
a big problem.
It's a
in this
big
country.
problem. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. I mean, this is something that we need to work hard at it. Maybe money and multimedia should think about filling this data gap.
It will be interesting to know how this will run out. But I want us to move to this direction because trade and industry is one issue that Imani raised big time. One district, one factory. We know in the year that we are talking about, 2017, virtually nothing happened. They went through a lot of processes, having to select and deselect some companies, and proposals were taken. But what they want to do now is a new expression of interest has been put out there. If you're a company who wishes to build any factory anywhere in this country, come and we'll aid you do that.
Well, they are noble things to do. I don't doubt that. But you see, just like the tourism ministry is purporting to build hotels across the country without properly Aquaba hotels, without properly thinking that the connecting dots are issues of infrastructure. Because, well, the fact that government has lands dotted all over the country doesn't mean that automatically people will flock to it. There must be the connector reasons, and it could be infrastructure, energy, transport. The challenges with putting out expression of interest, I could say, is that it may take longer, because if I'm a businessman and I'm coming and I'm taking advantage of that, I probably would have to start quantifying what the end game really would be for me. Even if I decide to do a cashew-based industry, I may have to ask myself, is there ready market within this country? Is there ready access to resources? I mean, raw materials, blue skies could have been integrated into this one district, one factory. You know why?
Because they're already
doing stuff, and they're even importing raw materials. If you have a well-standardized mini multinational entity which is struggling to feed its own industry base here, I may have second questions about just seeing expressions of interest. But I agree that the Ministry of Trade and Industry is interested in facilitating. What we should be careful about is that we should not be caught up in this constant loop of saying, well, we facilitated the processes, we expressed interest, but people did not come.
In 2017, we launched the Akunfi pineapple factory. Up to now, there's no factory there.
Well, Raymond, so these are the things you get from the ground. And I'm sure you know the reasons why the Akunfi pineapple hasn't taken off. You know?
Yeah.
Right. You probably will share it with us.
No.
But just like the sugarcane factory, you remember under the NDC?
Yeah.
We were, and again, we were in this constant, very emotional attachment to creating local industry, local champion. These are things the economic literature has shown that in the 60s and 70s, we did these things in Africa and Latin America, and they failed. They failed because the notion that the state will be led, or the state has to lead the process itself, is mortifying enough.
Okay.
And they are leading examples. So NDC launched the sugarcane factory. 1 month later, it collapsed. $35 million gone down the drain. Well, the good thing about the MPP is to suggest that, well, we wouldn't put money, but we'll back it. The AGI went to China, and they said they've secured $2 billion for one district, one
Not
factory.
a press has been released today.
It's not even the fact. This is going to be on a 10-key basis. You see, the Chinese, as you and I know, under the NDC, again, the CDB loan, if you don't show $1 million, they don't give you $1 billion. So if you thought that the Chinese are for the Christmas, well, maybe we are not. We should think again. So the challenges to these kinds of interventions are such that they may be very noble, but they may take too long. And I said, let's learn from the fastest growing economy in Africa today, which is Rwanda, which is showing the way that you can build assemble a car plant, which will be technology-based, technology-driven, create 1,000 jobs in one fell swoop, and spend only $20 million.
We are rather fixated with, let's start a company first. Let's build a company that's supposed to take off from raw material and economy of the country or the other. If you read the entire concept of the one district, one factory, it says a district has some raw material in there. It has some comparative, I don't know how they did it, advantage in an area. So that's where we want this particular factory to go to.
But Raymond, now the question we should be asking ourselves really, this thing keeps coming back and forth. The value of our districts in this country, until we create additional ones again, is virtually $1.5 billion. Some of those districts are even, but that's the potential value that they have. So if I'm a businessman going to set up, I ask myself, what is the buying capacity?
Who's going to buy
What
from
are the
there?
potentials of even the raw material based in those districts? So then automatically it sets me apart from saying I'll put a factory in every district. Again, it's noble. Look at the dams thing. I mean, it's great to have dams. When we're driving from Accra to Tamale, and we're asking ourselves, some of the few plantations we saw, people already had their own probably dugouts and all of that. But the records of implementation, I'm sure maybe this year, a lot of the money from the special ministry
Yes, they've actually
used to
allocated some amounts that some 666,000
but we
is going
should
to be
be
used.
cautious, because you see, you don't go about digging dams just because you want to dig dams. If they are not connected, integrated properly, we may actually end up having too much money to keep digging dams as if we are digging graves or mass burial. And I think these are things we should be cautious about. You see, the challenge I have with politicians is that, and again, all over the world, because they don't use their money, it's the tragedy of the commons. If you were using your money, would you say, I want to put a dam in every district, even if the district is not going to return any, and then what? Start planting banana, start planting. And I'm
actually, it was revised from every village to every district in this case. So the dam, yes.
Oh, so the dam
was supposed to be per village, yeah.
But it's been revised to every district?
Yes.
Okay, so it keeps evolving. The fact of the matter is that these things are wonderful ideas, but we are saying that maybe the politicians have a very fixated tenor, fixated on doing things that are physical so that we can connect. But we should be cautious. I mean, but these things I say are our own beliefs at Imani, and we are very libertarian, market-oriented. And in some regards, I thought that it would be in sync with the NPP as
Which
well.
should be the case, because the same libertarian thinking that should underpin a political party, that is...
But that's what happens when politics takes over.
That leads towards the right.
Because I wouldn't set up a special ministry development initiative. The budget for that
budget
ministry...
$2 billion.
Oh, is it? I thought it was $1 billion.
No, it's $2 billion actually.
And they are creating a website for $200,000.
80,000.
The revised figure.
Yes, it's 8,000. It was $800,000. And what? Of course, 800. It's $20,000.
Well, they said it was 800,000.
800,000 cities. They brought it down to 80,000.
Because we found out, and they said it was a typo.
It was a mistake in there.
Do you know the police service?
Yeah.
The number of gadgets, communication gadgets they have for 1,700 police posts are just about 400. Each of them cost $1,000.
Wow.
They will have less than 400 of those for the police stations. And so the things that happen in Kwabenya and some godforsaken places around the country, they don't even have the gadgets to even say, because those gadgets are special gadgets, $1,000. And when I saw the budget for the website, for the special development, I asked myself, why are we doing these things to ourselves? By the way, I think that ministry should not exist in the first place, because most of the functions, the entire functions, are duplicatory. You've seen it yourself. But what are they doing? Boreholes, 1 million per one district, infrastructure-related stuff. These are things that ought to be done. I think what we are seeing, and in terms of governance, is an over-centralization of efforts at the center. Look, the challenges of, CDD and IEA used to talk about with a winner takes all democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a flagging democracy, because what we do have right now is that even though President Mahama overran his budget from the Flagstaff House, including the Office of Government Machinery, in some years 300 million, 99 million, and I think in some other year 200 million Ghana cedis. When he was leaving office, the budget for the Office of Government Machinery was almost 1 billion cedis.
Yeah.
People haven't realized that the budget for the Office of Government Machinery under the NPP in 2017 was 1.5 billion cedis.
Yeah, the concerns were being raised.
But this year is 3 billion.
Yes, but they're saying that the Office of Government Machinery is supposed to be spearheading major events.
Yeah, but they have 6 ministries that have been padded there. Ministries that
including the Special Development
should not exist.
Mm-hmm.
And our calculations are saying that if we yank off that ministry, we'll save 300 million Ghana cedis. Because if we allowed all the other ministries to, that's even assuming that the projects themselves are viable.
Because they're supposed to spearhead some integrated poverty evaluation reduction. Yes, IPEP in this particular case.
Yeah.
That particular IPEP program is to say, and the president has been very, very concerned about that, we need a poverty eradication program that's comprehensive and deals with the people's needs and engage the people. So what I've heard Hawa Kumsin say to me before, right in your seat, is that, well, they have spoken to the people, they've told them their needs. Some of them, they can't go to the district assemblies. And these are needs they are going to fix immediately.
Have you seen a needs-based assessment report?
I have asked for that. I've not received it.
This but that's the point.
August last year, yeah.
But Raymond, you've been in the news.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen the problems with infrastructure that has been left over and not used, hospitals.
Yeah.
And then we heard about, you guys are doing something on roads these days, and cheap compounds.
Mm-hmm.
But on our way back here, we met the Director General for Ghana Health Service and
he was also
the ministry. They are going around, going to inspect these things. You know, it is always useful, and this is a sad appeal to the electorate, that whenever politicians come to you, ask them, tell them what you really need. And it shouldn't be the case that they go design things for you. I'll be waiting for the Special Development Initiative to give us that report that says that people across the country say they need boreholes, they need the poverty alleviation programs.
Yes.
It will be very useful, because we conducted one before the elections.
Yeah.
And we found out that even in agrarian-based areas like Brahafo people, like Brahafo region, what the youth there were thinking about was not connected to even agriculture.
That's interesting.
And that's sample size of 10,000 Ghanaians. And we found, and we were shocked that agrarian-based areas in this country were not concerned at all about even agriculture. So when you go around erecting a dam and in one district or one village, you ask yourself, who are you catering to? I'm not saying that because we have land, we shouldn't till the land.
Of course, boreholes are also top on the agenda of this particular ministry, and it's going to be constructing so many of them, over 200, as stipulated in its own budget.
Did you know, Raymond, then again, this country is littered with water bodies all over the country. I remember my boss, Charles Mensah, when I used to work at the IE, said, why don't we do proper decentralization and allow every region to manage its water system?
So dam a small water body in your area? Yeah,
because I attended some in Pope John's. Every other time, at certain parts of, I think, March, we were always in dire need of water. Yeah. But there was the Oti River. And when we spoke to the GWCL people at the time, they said everything is decided in Accra. So we don't have, we can't even think on our own. And maybe I think the biggest legacy of President Nana Addo will be when he fully decentralizes and allow people to vote and they'll determine things. I bet you when that day comes, nobody will come with a 2 billion CD budget telling you that the people of Bunkrugu or Lolobu Kumasi need boreholes.
But isn't it interesting that the government that seeks to actually make district assemblies, districts vote for their DCs and whoever happens to be the MC in that particular area, is also having a ministry that's spearheading projects from Accra, seeking among other things to make sure that it leads this in the poverty reduction base?
Well, you know, if I have to be blunt, and I think we all know the reasons, I mean, it's the politicization of life, basically, politicization of projects. That's the way I see it. To centralize everything and then direct everything from the presidency, because somehow maybe the president also believes that people are not going to be responsible. Of course, there was a mantra at the point that civil servants actually sabotage political projects. That could be true, but the cure is not in padding the numbers and padding the ministries under your nose. Because what you do is, when you do that, in fact, the seeds for waste and corruption actually then begins. And that's the challenge. We've said at Imani that the special prosecutor is wonderful.
Yeah.
All these anti-corruption agencies are wonderful.
And that's how it's coming to governance.
But fighting waste and corruption begins at the office of government machinery. Because as I've shown you, and you, Raymond, have been verifying the figures, 1.5 billion, we haven't been told of the overruns for last year, but they are now getting 3 billion because Social Development Ministry initiative is sitting there. The opportunities for waste and overruns would exist. So in spite of the macroeconomic stability that we've seen in the first year, which by the way is anchored on the framework of not really spending that much, because it is this year that a lot of the spending will be done.
Oh, okay.
This is when we'll call
the major projects will not roll out beyond
exactly,
free SHS anyway.
Exactly. So this is when the dexterity of our finance minister would actually show, because he now needs to follow at his computer and look at the numbers going into this project. And I'm sure you'll be interested in the returns rather than the cosmetic erection of this project.
There's
because
a
it's a man who really believes in value.
There's a question, though, on trade facilitation. There's a question why, under the NPP, Ghana went as high as 120, that's ranking, on the Doing Business report. Is this worrying our current trend?
Well, let's face facts.
Especially when, to be fair, the NPP has a history of being pro-business and pro-private sector.
Yeah, but Raymond, let's also be fair to the narrative as well. So we're on a decline under the NDC. Even in the competitiveness index report, we were occupying very frightening positions, right? So under the NDC, we're actually, when the NDC was exiting, we were 108th.
Yeah, 108, the last ranking in 2016.
Then in 2017, we got 112, 112, and this year we are 120. You know, part of me believes that the way we even build our data and report on these things to the World Bank is problematic. But let's be fair. The government has introduced certain measures, at least the paperless issues, which has actually raked in some revenues. But there are challenges with setting up a business and paying a tax, which are some of the basic things, the rankings look at. So even though they may have done things, and paperless has increased revenue according to government figures by 34%, and has reduced the waiting period from 2 days to 8 hours, even though some people still complain, the challenge is that if we don't take care, we may be plummeting on the
people at the port are saying that they are paying more. Yeah, and that to them, paperless did no good to them, especially the amount of money
you and I have to conduct a further audit and see those things happen. But the challenge is that, you see, to do well on those rankings, apart from government itself and we in civil society and media helping to conduct the audit, we should also be advising government to be very careful. Because if we don't take care, the idea that we would urge every African country in 2020 to be the most preferred place to do business may be illusory. You know why? Because the basic things that World Bank Doing Business report looks at is starting a business and paying a tax. And on starting a business, we aren't doing properly well. The Registrar General's Department advertises, I think, 24, 48 hours online. But you start the process and you are asked to generate a TIN number, which will take you 6 months. Two months or something. The
Vice President's officers, they are called them to rectify the problem.
Actually, as a result of our intervention, and we thank the Vice President office, because I think they have a special delivery unit. Well, I got a response from the Registrar Generals as well. They are in the process of fixing it. But you know what I know? What I know is that these were clear attempts to sabotage the Vice President's efforts. Because you see, the fact of the matter is that I don't know whether some of our civil servants are afraid of technology. Look, there was a time when we were trying to introduce anti-counterfeiting measures in this country.
Forgive me, but I was told clearly that the biggest problem with that particular setup is the generation of tin numbers. And
which is true.
Automatically did not generate tin numbers, which they felt they had to fix before they continue.
But that is where the incoherence and the illogicality in the policy-making space in this country is still not changed. Because you advertise 24 hours, but then the challenge is that you start the process and then you get locked up. Then you say, go and generate tin. That's offline.
Yeah.
And I told the Director General's Department that in 2005, when I was visiting Hong Kong for the WTO Ministerial, together with my friends, within an hour, we actually registered the business. Their response was that, well, now it takes six hours to do it. And probably at the time, I had the passport number. And I said, yes. So if you really want to do well on the doing business report, get your national identification thing fixed immediately. Get this TIN number. In fact, TIN number should be generated at random. I hear GRA says they've reached 1 million.
Yes, so far.
Well, look,
within a year,
certain milestones that are quite achievable within a short period of time. You remember under the NDC and PNDC time, they set all these targets and then they announced that they've actually overachieved them.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is that 1 million compared to the millions that we need is not enough. So the airline to get the national identification thing working should happen quickly. That's the integratedness of, and I think that's what our government should focus on. The integration of policies, not people running around creating Eiffel Tower types of erecting. It's just the tourism ministry wants to build an iconic tower in Tema.
Yeah.
Look, Mr. Akufo-Addo, a respected lawyer, has said that the best use of our Greenwich Meridian time zone is to actually advertise to the world that Ghana means time and actually do everything on time so that anybody who comes to Ghana will say Ghana works on time. Not to go and erect an Eiffel Tower type of thing in Tema saying that it's an iconic thing. I mean, how do we just look? But
this is supposed to be.
And I'm sad that the World Bank. I don't know, look, because I'm actually yet to see the full framework of the tourism ministry's thing. But some of the donors are also partly to blame. Why would you be giving money to doing some of these kinds of things? And I think we should be questioning the World Bank as well. You have given a $50 million grant, and we are not saying that's not good to do. But when you start hearing things like building hotels based on a PPP basis, creating iconic towers, and building TV stations, you should start thinking that did you really venture into a very useful
You have a problem
enterprise?
With these projects?
I don't have a problem. I deal with value for money, and I'm looking at the problems the ministry already has. Poor signages at the existing tourist sites, no restaurants. In fact, restaurants that aren't properly, they are not called restaurants. They aren't. You don't have the infrastructure leading to these places are terrible. Look at the beaches that we have. Occasionally, you have somebody employing people cleaning the beaches and all of that. When we've had government intervention in La Palm, is it La Palm or Labadi? Go and look at the records.
Okay.
It's been wasteful. So and it's not just ideological, it's commonsensical, that in this day and age, you don't even dream of the idea that you want to lead the process to build hotels as a government entity. Then wherein lies the whole idea of a private sector-led approach? If you say you have land, of course, probably service the land then, and let me come and deal with it. But I should decide whether I have to build a hotel. By the way,
there's
did
a
you
concern
know,
that,
Raymond,
as we speak, the small road that links, what they call it, to Kakum Forest, we have done stories virtually every year about it.
Yes, you know that.
It's a very terrible condition.
Extremely terrible. And this is just Cape Coast.
Yes.
So if you want to create, erect an iconic tower, well, we should be stopping these things in their tracks before they come to Lulubi, Kumasi, and Akpafu to erect one, because we already have mountains.
That's interesting.
But but listen, I'm livid about these things, because when we say them, some people wake up and say, "Oh, they really these things have been thought through." I don't think they've been.
And they don't show any evidence of it.
And the challenge, look, I've been speaking to hoteliers. Do you know some hotels actually import water into this country?
We are told that in the Abuazi enclave they do so.
They do. In fact, there are hotels here that are suffering now. In fact, they are only able to meet 40% of their occupancy rate.
But I've not heard of the water importation part. That's a very serious matter.
Yeah, that's privileged information. But I've got to tell you that.
And what were they importing from outside the country? Bottled water?
Well, again, privileged information. I don't. I may probably give you the details later. But let's leave all of that. Occupancy rates for most hotels in this country are abysmal, 40%.
Yeah.
I've spoken to a number of them. The fact that they have to even source their materials from suppliers all over the country, and some even source from South Africa, apples and all kinds of things.
Okay.
Airbnb is actually now the single most potent competitor to hoteliers in this country and all over the world. In fact, I'll be using Airbnb when I travel sometimes to avoid steep hotel prices across the world. In Ghana, I know friends and I have friends who are benefiting a lot, and it's affecting the hotel industry. So when the ministry tells you that they are going to build low-cost budget hotels that would encourage local tourism, I say it is not anchored on any science, because the connection between low tourism patronage and low budget hotels is not being tested. Okay. That's the point. And I think we should be cautious the way these things, when we say them, it's not because we don't like somebody. And Ghana has a very interesting penchant, especially the political class, to first of all dismiss you because they think you don't have a viewpoint.
Yeah.
And the next level is that, well, we know it. But the money is not for you.
For the people, yeah.
It's for the people. And so then I think these are the things we should be talking about. If the World Bank was interested in eradicating poverty, they should be cautious.
I want to see the kind of proposals that are presented to the World Bank.
Isn't it challenging that, Raymond? You are a very important media person when it comes to data. Even you haven't seen it.
We shouldn't have all the time.
Listen, we shouldn't meet the presses are useful. And I think now I should be attending some of them because you hear very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
You've not heard anything. Look, that whole tourism agenda is not in sync with the coordinated medium-term plan of the government. Obviously not in sync with the budget. The only good thing that has happened to the tourism ministry is that we were clamoring for them to get more money for capex. Then when they got 60 million this year, they started dreaming about Eiffel Tower type, and then all kinds of things.
That makes me wonder what is this. No, but we need to move on to governance. I mean, corruption is a big thing. And the appointment of Martin Amidu is, of course, happened this year, but the office was set up last year. And the indication is that this is the biggest act of what they call it, this government's fight of corruption, which is emboldened by the man himself. But does the entire governance structure run on fighting corruption?
Well, the optics of having a Martin Amidu lead the charge, and we know he's an uncompromising man, it's noble. And kudos to the president. I mean, and I think the reaction that came was very positive. And Martin Amidu, obviously I know him, and he's a brilliant gentleman. You see, fighting corruption is not necessarily in sloganeering, and it's not necessarily in the type of persons that you actually appoint, even though I agree. But if the system to make the person work isn't properly there, then we challenge.
Has this government put in the right systems?
Well, I think they have. I mean, the systems we speak of right now are quite useful, even though we were mortified by the unnecessary Iyoko invasion of the EC and all of that. These things don't bode well. But the Shraj work itself has been largely very useful. So I would think that this government actually respects institutions, and I think it's useful, even though I think they are not helping the police as much as they should, because that one will come to that probably on security. But Raymond, I said a while ago that fighting corruption and waste is not just because people will steal money, but they may also waste money. Special prosecutor should not be limited only to looking for people who have committed crimes, but people who are actually in the habit of planning to waste. Because that's the way I see.
Can start from their budgetary, what they call intents, and their plans for the year.
And the plans of the year. And let's have an audit and ask ourselves, my friend, you want to do what? Build an iconic tower in Tema. To do what? To say Ghana is in the middle of the universe? But how is that connected to anything? What value would that bring? Maybe I'm dwelling on that too much. I've heard you say this
consistently because the symbolism of it. President Akufo said that Ghanaians actually know the cost of everything but the value of nothing. Have you considered the symbolism part?
You know, in development literature, there's been a lot of phantom aid projects. Projects that have been erected that had no value. our people have come to this continent, white people have come to this continent to create all sorts of and this Phantom project also exists abroad. In 2005, when I was doing an article for the Wall Street Journal, I chanced upon a quote by Paul Kagame.
Okay.
My article was Africa Need Freer Market and Fewer Tyrants. December 14, 2005. This is what Paul Kagame said. He said, I've seen projects in my country costing 5 million, that poverty alleviation projects in my country costing 5 million. When I look closely at the budget, 1 million goes into entertainment, 1 million into furniture for the staff, 1 million into buying vehicles, 1 million into paying salaries, leaving only 1 million for the project. Then he asks, is that how to fight poverty? So you may actually see an iconic tower and then say, oh, here we are the center of the universe. What value would it add to your economy?
Interesting.
So there's the question about the value addition that matters. And actually I expect a lot from officials of this administration. Okay. By the way, they have a Ministry of Monetary Evaluation. It will be interesting because some of the things I'm hearing so far,
the minister says
the minister is doing very well. I hear he's really on top of his job, and he's been questioning some of the ministers as to some of the rationale. Yes, he's been questioning, and some of them are not comfortable because as a monetary and evaluation person, in fact, you are the most powerful minister.
Yeah. After
the finance minister.
But monitoring still saw some of the projects that some of the ministries want to do, and it is happening today. Yeah.
Well, maybe the office hasn't particularly taken it up. We recall the Todiedu, who was given the job of monitoring evaluation. He wrote to all the ministers, and he came and said it on Joy. Nobody even bothered him
to respond to this. In health, NHIS is still supposed to be revamped. We are to see a proper enrollment. Not long ago, we were doing stories about where you just came not long ago, from the northern part of the country, where the doctor-patient ratio is very high. There are a few doctors there. There are districts in Upper West where there are no doctors at all. In fact, some of them do not have even health centers. The health performance within the last year, how has it been like?
Well, I think what they should have done first was to conduct an audit, which, by the way, I just told you on returning here, we met some officials of the ministry who had been to Bolga, Bonkubu, Yoyo, to go and look at the chip compounds and other things. But these are things that should have been done first. You take an audit of what. By the way, what goes into the handing over notes? I think we should start questioning those things.
It's not supposed to be audits too.
Because those were that's the starting point. So if we did an audit,
perhaps they will go to verify these things.
But even then, let's leave it at the level of the politician in the office today.
Okay.
If somebody tells you, the Minister for Special Development actually told you that they spoke to people and they were saying that these are the poverty so they need boreholes. But they didn't see the hospitals that are lying fallow. They didn't see the chip compounds that are lying fallow. You see, the people's health is also a function of people's poverty is a function of health care as well, and sanitation.
Yeah.
So if you didn't conduct a proper audit, these are the challenges you face. Okay. Having said that, the government has done well to clear the arrears. Half of the 1.2 billion, or nearly half, I think 500 something million has been cleared.
Okay.
It shouldn't even arise. Automatically, if we're respecting our institutions, once the money hits, it should go directly into the NHIL fund. It should be separated. But they've done well. Ambulances are another travesty. We should have 1,000 ambulances at least for this country.
Well, but the Special Development Ministry wants to buy some of these for the various districts.
Well, they claim they will increase it to 275 this year. But have you asked yourself the number of V8s that have been bought for every ministry since this government took over?
Have they? I thought there was a directive that they shouldn't buy.
Oh, but they are fueling the existing ones.
Yes.
And are you sure that no vehicles have been bought?
I've not seen that. And I've
Didn't you see in the Ministry of Special Development Initiative that they were going to buy vehicles?
That's true. Over 20 for the ministry itself, not for I mean, projects out there.
But there'll be only 200. The ambulances in this country will be increased to 275. That's a wish by 2018. Last year, only 55 of them were in operation. 55 of them were useful. Even though 165 were actually put on the road. I mean, how do you live in a country like that, where you need 1,000 ambulances, and you have 55 working in 2017 out of the 165, and in 2018 they'll increase it to 275.
I mean,
you know, when Trump describes you, and I'm not going to mention the word.
Yes.
These are serious matters we should take into consideration. Security and healthcare for people. It should occupy your most important agenda.
How are we doing with security? I mean, well, without the biggest headlines of the recent days, I mean, having the Kobinya issue and all of that, generally, how are we doing with security?
Well, what was promised was that they were going to make sure we were secured in the country. As you know, some of the challenges that came with the vigilante groups didn't particularly yield to that effort. 499 prison service personnel have been recruited.
Yeah.
The police will recruit 4,000. But Raymond, this is where it gets worrying. The police service, which should be the most important institution to protect us, has for years and decades been left idle. Under the NDC, in fact, they were not catered for at all. There were only wishes that they would build them accommodation. Not a brick was laid. So 2017, they got, I think, just about 20% of their budget. And even that is being contested.
Okay.
A police force about 38,000, when we should have 52,000, and this year they recruit 4,000.
That's not a huge vacuum.
Our police service is not fit for purpose because only 6,000 of this number actually are properly housed. And by properly housed, it means on one bedroom in a barracks or something like that. The guns they use are Second World War type, Kafugbe.
Not so all of them. I mean,
a lot of them.
The formed unit is a very powerful unit.
Oh, but that's the thing. It's like Nkrumah, when Nkrumah had his own brigade. Even Rawlings had his 64 battalion. Those people are well catered for. But the generality of the police service, I'm telling you, based on not just privileged information, but very well briefed sectorial plans of the police service that I've seen, is 7 weapons to a single, 7 personnel to a single weapon, and most of those weapons are Second World War type weapons.
I have to go, but what a 2.25 what they call it, $1 billion bond issues being raised by the minority prevail against the finance minister?
I think it's a bit of hot air, to be frank with you. I think that the issues around the finance ministry are actually distracting what should happen.
Okay.
I think it's much ado about nothing.
I guess I have to end here, but thank you so much. My guest today on Upfront is the founding president of Imani Ghana. We reviewed 2017. 2018, you heard much of that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.